Welcome to your first video inside the Defensive Systems Library. Now, it's a very exciting video because we're going to be going through the fundamental defensive system upon which all our other defensive systems are built on. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. It's super important that you guys get this right because, again, everything else that we learn inside the group inside Ultimate on defense is going to be built on this core idea. So please get your pen and notebook out, take some notes along the way so that we can really consolidate this into your understanding, because it's going to be really important to get right moving forward into our other systems. Cool. With that being said, let's get started. We're going to start with some theory. So take some notes on the theory, and then we're going to go through an example as well so that you guys can see firsthand how this system applies to improve your decision making and improve your game IQ out there on the field. So what is the fundamental system that we're going to be going through? Well, the name of it is the risk space rating. What is the risk space rating? Effectively, it's a system in Ultimate that we use to determine which spaces on the field are risky or not risky. Now, what does risky mean? It means it's a space where the offense is trying to get the disc, where the offense can get the disc. And so depending on a different numbers of variables, or depending on different variables, there's going to be spaces in Ultimate that are more risky than others. In other words, there's going to be spaces in Ultimate that are high risk. We're going to give them a high risk rating. And there's going to be other spaces in Ultimate that are low risk, and we're going to give them a low risk rating. And what we want to do as a defender and as a defense is to always prevent the high risk option and be okay with not being as close on the low risk option, because they're not going to get the disc there anyways. So in summary, that is what this system is. We want to get really good, and I mean really, really good at understanding exactly where on the field is high risk so that we can make these calculated decisions with our movement, with our commitment, with our footwork, so that we can get those blocks in those high risk spaces and get those blocks in those low risk spaces as well if they do come up. So let me take you through a key example, and let me take you through exactly what terminologies and how I want you guys to be thinking about this inside our games. And so there's going to be three main variables that I want you guys to start thinking about when it comes to making this calculation in your head as to what is high risk versus what is low risk. So I'm going to move my face to the side a little bit, and you'll see here that we have a vertical stack with a cutter isolated on the right side of your screen. Now, if you guys have any questions, if anything is unclear at all, again, just send me a message, send me a DM. More than happy to send you some additional resources to support you in your learning here. But with that being said, we're going to jump right in here. So in this scenario, we have the disc here on the right side of the field, and we've got a mark just forcing flick neutrally. Now, I want us to think in this scenario, there are a few risk spaces, right? Where could the offender cut? Have a think. Well, the cutter can cut deep, the cutter can cut under. So in this situation, we'd probably say that everything is high risk. This space is high risk, okay? We'll put an H for high, and the underspace is high risk, okay? So no dramas there, okay? We're trying to cover everything. It's going to be tough because everything is high risk. But let's focus on one variable at a time. How can we use our game IQ, use our risk space rating to better inform our decision making? Well, let's change one variable. So the first thing I want us to think about is the thrower. Who is the thrower? So let's say this thrower has a low throwing range. They're not particularly strong. They're not able to huck, right? They're not able to throw really far towards the end zone. So what does that mean for our risk space rating? So let's write it R, S, R, our risk space rating. If the thrower is weak, okay, then our risk space rating says that the end zone becomes low risk. Okay. Now, because the end zone is low risk, what does that leave us with? Well, it means that the under, this space in front of the disc, becomes high risk. And so how can that inform our decision making? Well, it means that as a defender, we can be more aggressive in stopping the under. Now, it doesn't always mean that we want to position ourselves right underneath them this way, but it might mean we can stay neutral with them and commit harder on the under, knowing that it's high risk. So that's the first thing I really want us to get right, is always be conscious of who the thrower is. And I want you guys to write that in your notebook as well. And during this week, we want to be very clear in understanding who is our thrower so that we know whether the end zone is a high risk or not. If you guys can get this 1 point right, I guarantee your defensive efficiency will increase by at least 50%. So that's the first thing we want us to think about, is who is the thrower, right? So that we know if the end zone is high risk or not, and if the under is high risk or not. And how does that inform our decision making? It will inform us so that we know which one to commit to, which one not to commit to. Now, if we flip the script and we say that this thrower is a really strong thrower, right? Then what does that mean now? It means that the end zone here, instead of being low risk, it becomes high risk. And so how does that inform our decision making? Well, it means that if they start cutting deep and this person loves to huck it, then let's go just as hard with them, assuming that it's going to go up. All right, let's go just as hard with them, knowing that this place is high risk, knowing that if we do want to get a block, because we're assuming the disc is probably going to come up because it's high risk, then we need to go hard, we need to go early. And I'll show us an example of what that looks like at the end of this video as well. So that's the first thing to think about. And again, if you can get this first thing right, that's already going to increase your defensive efficiency by 50%, guaranteed, if you can apply this consistently. The second thing I want us to think about is position. So once we know what the thrower is, or who the thrower is, then we can think about where is the position of the cutter and where is the position of the disc. Okay, that's going to inform us on what area is high risk. So let's think about it this way. If this cut was coming in from very deep, or let's say they're even coming in from the 5 of the stack, which happens a lot, oftentimes this 5 of the stack is quite far away. You can see this is quite far away from the frisbee. And so it's very difficult to make this throw all the way deep behind the 5 of the stack and have it come fast enough so that you can't contest it. So what does that usually mean? Oftentimes, these 5 of the stacks are really only cutting for the under. It means that the risk space, let's think in risk space terms, it means oftentimes this is low risk, and a lot of the time, this is high risk, based on the position of where the cutter is and where the thrower is. See, they're so far apart, right? Makes it hard to hit this huck all the way towards the end zone. I'm just going to erase this. So in that situation, we want to be ready to contest harder on the under, stopping this area because it's high risk. So that's the second thing, position, right? Oftentimes, if they're cutting from very deep, we can over-index. Doesn't mean that we have to position like this, but it means even if we're out here, if they do make a move under, we want to anticipate it and we want to come all the way in and be ready for that. Okay, again, go just as hard when they're going under, knowing that they're going to commit to this high risk space, because if they turn around, they're still quite deep. It's hard to hit this shot. Okay, again, different story if they're a really good thrower, right? Or we have a really good thrower on the field, that changes the risk spaces. But again, this is the fundamental thing that I want you guys to start thinking about, is what are the risk spaces in the first place. Okay, the last thing I want you guys to think about, so we've got the thrower. Okay, let's recap. The thrower is the first thing. Make sure you guys have that down. The second thing is the position. Okay. And excuse my handwriting. The third thing I want you guys to think about, and this is, by the way, position of both the cutter and position of where the disc is as well. The third thing I want us to think about is the mark. Okay. Where is the mark? And so if the mark is forcing flick, and let's say the disc is on this side of the field, right? And let's say we have this scenario where the break side cut is coming, and we followed it, we've tracked it, we followed them quite far, and now they're going all the way out here, right? If the mark is here, what does that mean? Do we need to follow this person all the way out towards the sideline? Oh, I've deleted them off the face of the earth. But do I need to follow this person all the way out to the sideline? Well, probably not, right? Because this area now becomes low risk. What does become high risk, however, is this space here, right? Because now their position is short, right? Close towards the disc. This is usually the high risk option if they change direction and decide to cut deep. And so what does that mean for us? Well, it means that we don't need to suck all the way in right next to them. We can let them go towards the break side after a certain point, still stay connected with them somewhat, but anticipate them to change direction so that we can start contesting the new risk space. So those are three things that I want us to consider: the thrower, the position of the disc and our cutter, and also the mark. Make sure you guys have that clearly in your notebook, because we're going to be revisiting those, especially when we're moving on to later modules where we're using this as a fundamental framework to think about. So now, with that in mind, and now that we're good at analyzing the risk space and we're thinking about the right things, I want to take you through two examples actually on a field that you guys can use in your games, but also this is an example from previous film that you guys can use to think about this theory and think about how this applies in a game. So let's jump into our examples. I'm going to link these video examples down below so that you guys can analyze it in your own time as well. But I'm just going to zoom through it so that you guys can get this value in nice and quick. So I'm going to play it once and I'm going to explain it once. And if you need to go back into it, do that in your own time. Okay. So this is going to be me playing it once, seeing what happens. Cool. And you can see that block is coming from downfield. One more time. Perfect. So let's break this down very clearly in our risk space rating. Okay. At this point, we have a deep cut happening here. Now, what do you notice? Deep cut is happening from quite far away from the disc. Okay. So that's point number 2, position, right? We also notice that the thrower doesn't look like they want to huck it off the standstill. So we're not too concerned about this deep cut. And so with that information in mind, we can certainly follow them, but we're not going to fully commit to their end zone cut because this is low risk. Okay, so you can see the defender is going to stay close with them, but they're not going to fully commit and run 100% with the defender because the end zone here is low risk. Okay, let's move into the next frame. One of their throwers now gets the disc under. Okay, now let's go through our checklist. 1, the thrower. We can see that, look at the distance between where the cutter and the thrower is, all right? Quite far. This thrower is probably not their key hucker on the line. And so we can see that because the thrower probably doesn't have that range to uncork it, hit it all the way to the end zone. Again, the end zone is low risk. Okay. Furthermore, point 2, the position. You can see that now the offense is very far from the thrower as well. So what does that mean? It means that, again, low risk in the end zone, but it means that underneath, this is the high risk. Okay. And so what does this mean for our defense? How does that inform the way we play defense? It means that we don't need to commit as far on the away cut. It means that when they change direction and come under, we know that this is going to happen. We know that they're going to cut here because it's unlikely that they're going to change direction and go deep because it's too far. So what can we do as a defense? We can overplay this. Okay. We want to overplay, and I want you guys to write that term down, overplay. Whenever there's a risk space, whenever there's a clear high risk space and a clear low risk space, we want to overplay the high risk space. And that's exactly what the defense does here. They overplay it, knowing that this is going to come. They see the block, and then they go for it. Okay. So we always need to be thinking about these terms. What is high risk? What is low risk? And whenever we can clearly identify a high risk space and a low risk space, we want to overplay the high risk space. And we want to underplay the low risk space. Okay, still stay close, still stay close enough to contest if it does go up towards the low risk space, but we're not worried about it as much. Okay, again, if you can get this right, first of all, it's going to underpin all our other defensive systems, all our other defensive frameworks. But if you can just get this one thing right, it's probably going to increase our defensive efficiency by 50%. Okay, that means more blocks. It means being less tired on defense as well, because we're only covering what actually matters. We're going to go through one last example, which hopefully gets the message over the line. In this scenario, I'm actually on the field here, and there's a quick turn, and I'm playing defense as this player over here. Okay, let me see if I can draw. So what you're going to notice is the disc is going to swing to this side. Okay? And then I'm playing defense on this player here. Now, very clearly, in a second, I'm going to identify a high risk space and a low risk space. Okay? The disc swings. First of all, let's think about the checklist. Okay? Thrower. I'm not sure if this is a good throw or not. Okay, we'll see. The main thing I'm worried about here is the position, because they're starting from very short. Okay, the position is quite close to the thrower, and therefore what does that mean? Well, it means that the end zone is high risk. Okay, because they're so short, it means that in front of the disc, this is low risk. And so again, I've identified a space in the field where there's high risk, low risk. Now, question to you guys, what do you do when you can identify a space on the field that's high risk, low risk? What do you need to do about the high risk space? What's the terminology we use? Correct. If you said overplay, then you're right. Okay, we want to overplay that. We want to commit hard to that, knowing, trusting that that's the risky space that is going to come up. Okay. The other thing is point number 3. What was point number 3 in our checklist? We got thrower, we got position. Number 3 is the mark, right? I know that the mark is not set yet. Because they swung the disc, the mark is not set, and therefore this huck on the back end is available. So that's also going to inform my decision making, right? It means that the huck towards the end zone, the big strong backhand huck, is available as well. And so that also means that, again, this is high risk and this is low risk. I see this person take a few hard steps. I know that I just need to go just as hard with them to overplay the high risk space straight away. Okay, and you can see me do that straight away. Look how hard I make that initial cut. I'm just going to play it once more. I'm just going to roll it. I want you guys to notice how hard I bite on this initial move. Right? I accelerate as if I was the offensive cutter, and then I'm able to get in front of the disc and get that block. Right? If I didn't take these initial steps, look how hard I make this move here. I put my head down, I really sprint. Right? Knowing that that's high risk, knowing that I'm overplaying the high risk space. And because I really sprint on those first initial steps, it means I can get in front of the disc in this scenario. And I come down with a huge block against a receiver that's quite significantly taller than me, or quite, decently taller than me. So this is how we can use our risk space rating to improve our defensive decision-making, to improve our defensive game IQ. So during this week, I want us to think, if we're ever in a scenario like this, where the defense or where the offense is setting up short, where they don't have a mark on, right? We want to think, is there a high risk space area on the field? Is there a low risk space area on the field, right? Does that mean there's a space where it's high risk and we have a low risk, right? Does that mean we want to overplay a high risk space and underplay a low risk space? If we can do that, it's going to mean, again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but it means that we can contest exactly what we need to. It means that we can overplay the risky space. It means that we're going to improve our defensive efficiency because we're contesting what's actually risky and we're not contesting what's actually not. Okay? So let me just play this one last time, right? Knowing that they're starting short, I commit hard overplay hard, knowing that the end zone is the risk space, and I'm able to get that block. Okay? So I know we spent a fair bit of time, about 20 minutes now, talking about our risk space rating. But hopefully by now you understand exactly how important it is and exactly why and exactly how to be thinking about it on the field. Whenever we can identify a high risk space on the field, we want to overplay it. Okay. Now, it's not always going to happen on the field. Sometimes we're in scenarios where there's all the spaces are high risk, right? In that situation, we can't always take away everything, but oftentimes there are situations on the field where there's a high risk space and a low risk space. So your activity, your challenge during this week is whenever you are playing, I want you guys to consider and think about what area is high risk and what area is low risk when different scenarios happen in the game. And if you have a few different scenarios that come up during your gameplay this week or during the film that you watch this week, I want you to share it with the group, and I want you to send me a DM noting that you found a scenario where you've identified a high risk space and a low risk space, and I want you to send a DM to me, and I want you to actually do it, okay? Send me a DM saying how your defensive decision making changed because of that, okay? So that's your challenge this week. Find one scenario where you identified high risk space, a low risk space, a high risk rating, a low risk rating, and how your defensive positioning changed because of that. Okay? Maybe you thought about the thrower. Maybe you thought about the position. Maybe you thought about the mark. Okay? Out of those three, the first thing I want you guys to consider is who the thrower is. If you guys can just get this one thing right, who the thrower is, I guarantee there's so many opportunities where the thrower is a weak thrower. You simply do not need to worry about the heart coming up. Okay? So have a think about those variables, most importantly, who the thrower is, and I guarantee this week you will find an opportunity where you've identified a high risk and a low risk space, and you've improved your decision making because of it. So that's your challenge for the week. I'm going to hold you accountable to it. Share it with the group. Most importantly, share it with me, so that I know that you guys are thinking this way during this week inside your gameplay. Okay? Now, I appreciate this is a long video, so thank you for sticking around until the end. But this is long because I know you guys are here to get better. I know you guys are here to improve your defensive game IQ. And most importantly, this is the fundamental theory, fundamental system upon which the rest of our defensive frameworks, defensive systems are going to be built upon. So if you can get this right, if you can really just focus in and get this right and figure out, make these calculations confidently on the field, then everything else is going to come super easily and super intuitively to you. So I hope you have a full page of notes now. This is very exciting for you guys to implement, but start thinking about these variables, start thinking about risk ratings, start thinking about high risk, low risk, and start thinking about overplay, underplay. Have those terminologies written down. If you want me to have a look at your notes, more than happy to have a look, but please make sure this week you send me a DM on where you were able to find a high risk space and where you were able to find a low risk space and how that influenced your decision making. Maybe you committed to a huck, maybe you didn't, right? Because you knew it was low risk. Maybe you committed to a break side cut, maybe you didn't, right? Let me know, and let me know how that worked out. Let me know if you're able to get a block from it as well. That's all for this introductory video. Now you should know exactly how to use your risk space ratings. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one, the next version of these defensive systems, so that you can improve your game IQ and your game decision making on the field. That's all for now. Send me a DM. I'll see you guys in the next video.